Hello and good morning, and welcome to the second panel session of the first day of our Building Life Science Adventures Careers Conference. So I'm Alicia Galliers, Business Development Manager at Nucleus, and I'm delighted to be opening our session this morning. So for those of you who joined us for the first panel session, there was a very engaging discussion on mentoring. So the pros, the cons, how to access that. So leading us nicely into the second discussion. So perhaps once you've decided where you want to be in your career, how do you achieve that? So what tools, perhaps what skills are we looking at? So I'm delighted to be joined by Ricky Martin, who will be our chair for today, and our excellent lineup of panelists, who I'm sure will also introduce themselves. Before kicking off, just a kind reminder to everyone else to stay on mute whilst the panel are discussing. And also the chat box is enabled, so we do welcome your comments and your questions. We would like to keep an interactive session, so please don't be shy and please utilise the chat box for that. And also to kindly remind that we are recording this morning's session, and it will be available as part of the on-demand content for the conference that you can access via the app. So with that, I'm going to disappear into the background and I'm going to hand over to Ricky Martin. So really looking forward to the discussion, Ricky, and I'd like to hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. If it's your second panel session of the day, I hope that you've warmed up on the first and you're ready for this one. This is the big one. But just to introduce myself quickly, I'm Ricky Martin. I'm the Managing Director and founder of a science recruitment company called Hyper Recruitment Solutions. But most importantly, I am a biochemist originally from Cardiff University. I'm a member of the Royal Society of Chemistry, and I've spent the last 15 years helping people up and down the country and in other parts of Europe with their careers across the life sciences. So this is a topic I'm really interested in. Anything about helping people get jobs is really important and means a lot to me, but also anything where you guys can help to invest into yourself, hence this topic, investing into personal R&D. I'd like to add some value, and I've got a great selection of guests on the panel, which I won't introduce one by one because you guys can introduce yourself much better than I can. So if it's okay, I'd like to go around the panel to start with. I'll just ask you all one by one just to introduce who you are. And then I'm going to come back to you with a second question so you're aware of that, which is what does personal R&D mean to each of you? And all I'd say to anybody who's listening is please, what we've decided not to do is create 15-20 minutes per speaker to tell you something and then give you a couple of minutes at the end to ask questions. We'd like this to be interactive. So any questions on anything we're saying, put into the chat box. I'll try and pick up them as well as Alicia in the background. If you want to jump in, please let us know. Let's just try and be as polite as we can because it's always hard when you have the internet slowing you down and working from home. So Andy, if it's okay, I'm going to come over to you to start with to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Andy Carr. I'm a group leader at Charles River Laboratories. So just in Harlow, so just outside London. Been here for 5 years now. It's my first management role. I lead our pharmaceutical sciences department. So my background is chemistry by training. Spent the first probably 7 or 8 years of my career as a synthetic medicinal chemist, and then stopped, retrained into solid state chemistry and pharmaceutics. I've been doing that for the second half of my career. So I currently manage a team of 10 scientists across multiple disciplines. Very interested in things like career development in terms of making sure we can get the most out of people that we employ. Very interested in hiring the right people in the first place. And I'm here today really because hopefully I've seen a few things in my career, and if we can pass on a few hints and tricks really to help people find jobs that they're happy with, then that will be an hour well spent from my point of view. I think you're on mute, Ricky.
I think they said they were the most used words in 2020, more so than COVID, right? So, yep, I was on mute. I was trying to be polite. So thank you, Andy. Thank you very much. And Nadia, if I could ask you to introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm Nadia Shivji-Brown, Business Development Manager at Public Health England. So my career is a cell biologist by trade, PhD at the Baber Institute in Cambridge. Worked about 10 years in cell biology, both in industry and academia, and then moved into business development took some time out to do an MBA, and really here just that kind of year out to reflect really taught me how important that was. So hopefully can speak a bit more about that later.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And Renos, over to you, please.
Okay, apologies for some buzzing in the background, but you know, it's not a pterodactyl, so I'm not terrified or anything. So I'm Renos. I am a senior lecturer at Birkbeck, which is the evening university in London, and I am very interested in careers for life scientists because you may well have seen, or you will see in other sessions, that, you know, only something like 0.5% of anybody who ever goes on to do a PhD becomes a professor in a faculty. So there must be other things for people to do. In fact, even by postdoc, only about 11% of PhD graduates are doing that. So there must be other things to do. Well, one of the things I did was I founded a biotech company, Domainex, and they're hiring, guys, so it's very topical. There's a lot of very good companies hiring at the moment. Might as well ping off a few names. Aztecs hiring, Domainex hiring, Touchlight Genetics hiring. You know, I could go on and on. If you're looking for a job, it's a great time to be a life scientist. I also, at the university, teach a course, master's level course called Biobusiness, because I think one of the things that life scientists don't realize is the amount of translational skills that they've got. And, you know, if you are one of those people who needs to convince yourself about that and add a bit of business, well, we heard from Nadia, she went and did an MBA, you know, I offer an MSc. There's loads of ways you can do CPD. So really coming from the educational side and from the side of, you know, daring to be a founder myself, and believe me, it's worth doing any of those things. Believe in yourself, be yourself is my message for today. And I won't spoil it by saying it all now in any more detail. So thank you, Ricky, for my 2 minutes of spotlight.
I think the Northern Lights have certainly added to that as well in the background for you. So thank you. And be yourself is a fantastic strapline I think we should remember for the entire session. So I think what I'd like to start with is a quick question to each of you, just to kind of set the scene and moving forward. Because when I was first asked to be part of this panel, I think the first question I said is personal R&D, what does that actually mean? And I think that will mean lots of different things to different people. So if each of you would be so kind, I'll go in the same order as before to tell me what personal R&D is in your opinion, and possibly one example of where you have invested into your personal R&D, because the best thing for anyone out there, if they're thinking about what's next or how they do things, is to get an idea of how people have done things. So Andy, would you be okay if you could tell me what you think it is and where you've had an example of doing it yourself?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, to me, it's all about understanding what you want to achieve and then investing in yourself in getting the right skills and experiences to get you to where you want to be. So, you know, in life sciences industry, there's such a wide variety of roles and lots of transferable skills that are useful across those different roles. So for myself, in terms of my personal career journey, I've ended up essentially retraining twice in my career. So I retrained scientifically once, so trained into a solid state science role. So going back to the drawing board, learning a whole new area. And then since I've started my role here, it's my first management role. So essentially I've had to retrain into a whole new role of learning how to be a manager, so that you're you know, responsible and supportive for the people working with you, and not just the work you're doing yourself. To me, the thing I found most useful was understanding what I wanted to achieve, where I wanted to be, because everything else comes back from that, essentially. So the thing I would encourage everyone to do, whether you're early in your career or whether you're later on and a bit more experienced, is have a clear idea of what you're trying to achieve. Because what that means is when you're deciding to invest in your development, you can make sure you're allocating your time to the right things, the things that you enjoy, and hopefully the things that are going to get you to where you want to be.
Perfect. And what really resonates with me there, Andy, if you don't mind me kind of sharing before we move on, is the reinvestment into yourself on multiple occasions there. Because I think a lot of people have this mindset when you come into industry or academia or you graduate that there's only one destination for you in the future. and showing that you've reinvested twice scientifically and kind of those other skills for managerial. I think it's something people don't remember, that we're never too old to reinvest into ourselves, and we're never too old to try something new. And sometimes we need to try something new because the world around us. So I think there's some powerful messages there, Andy. Thank you. Nadia, same questions to you really. What is personal R&D for you, and do you have an example?
Yeah, so I think it's about reflecting on what you're good at, what you want to achieve, and really just taking some time out to focus on your strengths and kind of work out what you want to do in your future. So example, as I mentioned, 2018 I actually quit my job and did a full-time MBA for a year in my late 30s. So I think, as you said, I'm not in my 20s. I kind of took that year out to study and reflect and build on those softer skills. It was really a combination of building on those softer skills plus reflecting if I was in the right career, if I was in the right industry, and what I wanted to do with my future, and also building up those business skills, as Ranos has already mentioned. So that was a real time of reflection for me, that I could just concentrate for a year on myself.
Nelly, do you mind me asking, how hard was that? Because let's be honest, you were successful in what you did. So to almost stop, do an MBA and think what's next, there's always an element where you can worry that you're letting people down, or why aren't you carrying? I mean, how did you feel going through that?
It was tough. I think it's very tough to kind of say, right, I'm not going to have an income for a year. Luckily, I had my partner to kind of support me on that. But I think I spoke to lots of people that had kind of made that decision, and a lot of women in the life sciences had kind of regretted not doing it before they had children. So it was kind of now or never, I think. So that was a real driver. I didn't want to regret anything. And I felt like I just didn't have that. I wanted to do a more commercial role. And I didn't think I had the right skills on my CV at that time to do that. So I thought this was a good stepping stone for that.
And did you have a lot of people that were probably at the time thinking, I know some people regretted not doing that. Did you have a lot of people saying that you were crazy? That why are you doing this? You know,
no, actually,
security.
Yeah, no, not at all. Everyone was really supportive. Everyone in the network was really supportive. So no one actually said to my face that I was crazy to do it. No, there might be people on the phone now thinking that, but no one kind of said it to my face.
Well, I think the key thing is you've always got to surround yourself with great people, like-minded people that can help you to better. The fact that they've supported and promoted you to do that because it's right for you, as opposed to held you back, means you've got the right network around you. So thank you very much. And last but not least, Ranos, from your side, what is personal R&D, and would you have any examples?
Yeah, absolutely. I echo almost everything that's been said so far. That's the bonus of going last. Over to you, Ricky. No, sorry. Basically, yeah, I completely echo everything. I also think the world of work is changing, and obviously, Ricky, you're our resident expert here. You know, people aren't as judgmental anymore about what's on your CV. They're looking for the person, they're looking for the drive, they're looking for those soft skills. And, you know, it can come out in your mission statement, your personal mission statement. Talk nicely to yourself. Talk up what you got in the tank. Okay, convince people you're the person who can get them where they want to be going. And that's more important even. You know, there are jobs out there where they want a specific kind of experience or a specific background, but not all jobs ask for this. And I'm not going to say too much because, as I say, Ricky's got more. My advice to people is what I did, which is even when it looks like the craziest thing to do, jump. Right, so I had no idea really about business when I was told to do a startup by Tony Jones at the tech transfer office back in the day. You know, it's like, right, you got to do a startup with that idea of yours or it's going nowhere. So I did a startup, right, and there I was doing part-time business development. I mean, I had a PhD in molecular biology. Who the hell does business development, right? I did it. And I, you know, more comfortably ran a lab team because I'd invented the technology. But, you know, there's a balance of comfort and discomfort. If you go out there and blag your way forward and fail a company, they're not going to thank you for it. On the other hand, if you're bold with the skills you've got, you can get far. And then if you need to add tokens, right, you need to add CPD, you need to add MBAs, MSCs, whatever it is, you can do that. There are strategic points. Really pleased to hear Nadia talking about those really critical life moments. It's now or never. Do this before you have kids, blah, blah, blah. You know, these are decisions that people really have to make. So, as Andy said, you know, you've got to be clear about what you're doing and put yourself in the crosshairs there and make yourself do it. Yeah, I'd never done lecturing before. So when I made the decision not to move forward with Domain X, I had to go off and learn how to become a lecturer. Well, so what? You know, you can do anything in life. Put your mind to it, put your passion into it, get it done. That's me.
Thank you. And what's prevailing from all of you is actually some of the softer skills here. I think we're not overly labouring any one-dimensional technical discipline here, some of the softer skills. And I think Andy's certainly kind of shown humility in terms of retraining multiple times to kind of better for what's next. Nadia, very much bravery, stopping something entirely to do that. And Renata, I guess I'm going to put inside of you, I'm going to put bravery as well, because to go and to do BD when you did molecular biology isn't necessarily the natural step forward. So if we can just focus on soft skills for a moment, if I take that as a theme for right now, any soft skills that you guys either you've seen in yourself or when you've met someone, I don't know, an interview maybe for a job or either for someone to work for you or around you, and they've got the perfect CV. What is it you've really looked for behind what's on paper in those softer people skills? Any, and again, question to all three of you at any point to jump in. What soft skills have been really important in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, the one that leaps out for me is communication. So whenever we're interviewing scientists, you know, technical skills are up front and center. But the other thing we're really looking for is communication. So in a CRO environment, for us at Charles River, it's really important because we're communicating with clients. We've got to get across what we've done, what the plans are, explain bad results sometimes. You know, we're sometimes going to be telling people bad news and we need to communicate that well. But even internally, we find now that science is so interdisciplinary that just being able to speak the same language as people from other departments and specialities is really important. So right up front and center of our interview processes, we always get people to present something technical. And you learn so much from seeing people present. You know, firstly, can they tell you something interesting? Can they tell you some science you've not seen before? But more importantly, can you structure a presentation? Can you get something that's technical and complicated across to people that haven't seen it before, you know, in a very short period of time? And people that can do that and can do it under the pressure of an interview tend to be really good communicators. And to be honest, we've interviewed people and just been really blown away by their presentations, and it almost trumps a lot of the other things that we're doing in the interview, because it sums up technical knowledge, communication, planning, structuring communication, all those kind of things. So I would put communication right up there as the key skill that we're looking for when we're hiring.
And Andy, if I can ask from a CRO perspective, of course, that's going to be quite prevalent because you've got customers where you need to manage expectations, manage timelines. You need to feedback bad news as much as the good news, which is the real art of the relationship management. I guess both with Nadia and Renas, if we can take these in other areas, do you guys agree? Because if we think, Renas, at the moment you're a senior lecturer, so let's look at very much of an academic kind of hat on. And Nadia, you've been in BD commercial roles where communication is key, but you've done it for membership communities like One Nucleus and two different. How much do you guys agree or disagree with communication in other parts of the sector?
Yeah, completely agree. Communication is key. And I probably take that one step further in saying emotional intelligence, I think, is really key at the moment. There's big debates on whether it's inbuilt or you can learn it. But I think understanding the way people communicate, how to interact with different people is part of communication, but is also something that recruiters are looking for more and more. So many people have got PhDs, masters and things. So it's really the interpersonal skills that make you stand out from everyone else.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. We also have a little bit of there's always a debate internally about whether if you interview a candidate and they're either technically strong but don't have some of those interpersonal skills, or they're really strong interpersonally but don't have the technical stuff, which is easier for people to learn? And we normally come down on the side of it, you know, we're comfortably good at what we do technically, and it's far easier for us to train someone technically that's got those good interpersonal skills than it is for us to take a really good scientist and train them in that communication and empathy. So we usually err on the side of we'll be able to teach people technical stuff. Some of the other stuff is harder to get into people if they don't naturally have it.
That's fantastic, Andy. I mean, I would agree with that. You know, you can always teach somebody how to work a piece of equipment, or what, you know, the standard protocol and the right level of QC is on that. But, you know, coming back to Nadia's point, can you teach emotional intelligence? Well, you might not be able to teach that, but what we do teach on a course like mine, for example, is how to be a reflective professional, and how to look at behaviors that you don't even know you got, ways of dealing with things that are so automatic that if only you knew, you'd change them. Well, you can do things like that. So hopefully, you know, people can also see the value of CPD. You can invest really in your personal R&D. And to take that one step further and to take my turn in this conversation, I would say another thing I do with a CV is it's very easy to just rack off the top 10 hot words of the year that people are writing online and put those on your CV. So I really do pick those apart when I'm interviewing people or when I'm mentoring people, because it's the same deal to me. If I'm mentoring someone, I'm preparing them for those questions in the interview. So basically, if you put something down, you've got to be able to justify that. You've got to be able to demonstrate it. Now, most people have got a lot of the soft skills that they write down. So they just write it down, but they don't prepare themselves for the inevitable questions or the inevitable situation of an interview where you have a chance to demonstrate the words on your CV, to bring them out into relief and to make people remember you. When you've left the room, you leave this aura, this three-dimensional aura of the CV. And that, for me, is what investing in your own personal R&D is about. It's becoming self-aware, self-responsible, and ready to leave your imprint on the interview room, so that when you go away, whether or not you get that offer, you don't feel you let yourself down. That's me again.
And if I can expand on that as well, because I think it's a really valid point. CVs and interviews and processes, and this is whether it's internal in a business or external. I think we need to remind ourselves that if you're looking to consider an opportunity for what's next that happens inside a business, you don't have to jump ship. I always say this ironically as a recruiter, you don't have to come to me if you explored the options where you are first. Because the last thing I want to do is waste anyone's time in the external market until you're absolutely certain on your internal market. But if I take Renaiss's point further, a CV is just words on a bit of paper, guys. It's all it ultimately is, and it ultimately gets you the interview. You as a person, your humility, the style about you is what gets that job at the end of the day. And as Andy says, there are technical skills that can be developed and coached for people. If they've got technical experts in the company, they can help you. Some of the personal bits, unfortunately, the bits that can be lost if you haven't practiced, if you're not aware of it. I've written down kind of 3 areas here. We've mentioned communication, emotional intelligence, and being self-aware as 3 probably key take-homes on that conversation. But question for, I guess, all of you, and this has actually come from the panel, which is really worthwhile on this. So thank you, Sarah, for the question that's come into the chat. Is there an opportunity cost in changing fields of spending too much time on personal development? Because we're labouring personal development, but how much time do we spend on that at the opportunity loss? So Sarah, thank you for the question. If I can pass that to the panel.
I mean, there definitely is an opportunity cost. I'll speak from my own experience. So, as I said, the first 7-8 years of my career, I was working as a synthetic medicinal chemist. I don't think I was ever the best chemist in the world, but I was earning a living doing it. I was reasonably good at it, and I decided to move into a new field almost by accident. Actually, the company I was working at closed down, and I needed to take a job. So I probably ended up taking a job that I wouldn't have done unless I had to. And actually really enjoyed it. So I can't talk about making a conscious decision because I was kind of forced into it. But I can talk about some of the consequences of it. And one thing is, it's quite scary. to do. It's unpleasant at the start to go from a job that you're comfortable doing and you understand your value, you understand that you're doing something useful, and to suddenly retrain and be, I'll be honest, absolutely useless at it for about 3 months whilst I'm trying to learn it is quite a daunting thing. And you feel, or I felt anyway, a bit like a spare part. But what I did find was it was a real incentive for me to learn that new field quickly, because I hated being the person in the room that didn't know what was going on and having to ask for explanations and all that kind of thing. So it was a real incentive to get up to speed quickly. And then beyond that, I actually found it gave me some advantages because I'd come from a different background. So I didn't lose all the skills I had in my previous role. So once I was up to speed in a new area, what I found was I was able to bring a slightly different bearing to problems because I'd had probably a non-traditional experience or background that the other people in the company had. So I'd say that there definitely is that initial opportunity cost. But if you can get past that and you can get up to speed quickly, you can actually be in an advantageous position to people that haven't switched roles and careers.
If I just, thank you, Andy, if I asked Nadia or Enos any input there as well?
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Nadia, sorry, you have something?
No, I was just going to say, I think we've probably all done that at some point in our career. I was in the lab doing a cell biology role, doing postdoc, kind of just got, I think a lot of us have got to that point where we just get bored of doing the experiments day to day and stop getting that drive to jump out of bed. So I kind of jumped ship on the science world and did, well, at that time, I thought it was 6 months events and business development manager role at One Nucleus. And it was kind of jumping ships, taking a slight pay cut, but it was trying something new. And just on the point of, is there too much time, can you focus too much time on personal development? I think you don't always have to take a year out like I did. You can kind of take time out in your day or do something in the evening or weekends, or it could just be asking for feedback from colleagues of what you're doing, what they think you can do better, what skills, and kind of just have those conversations. It doesn't have to be time out.
And I wanted to come back to a couple of the other ones. First of all, do you have to reinvent yourself every 10 years? Well, that's completely up to you. You can reinvent yourself every 6 months if you've got enough money in the bank, I reckon. But you know, reinventing yourself, what does it mean? You know, it really doesn't mean not being you anymore. I think what we'd like to get over today, we sort of had a bit of a chat before, is that you've got to be yourself. If something suits you, if you want to do it, as Andy said, prepare for that. Be clear about what it is and go for it. As Nadia says, you don't have to carve an entire year out of your life to do this if that doesn't suit you. And what I would say, the sort of new question that popped in, you know, do unis spend too much time doing technical skills and so on? Well, it's necessary to do technical skills. That's what employers are expecting, but we don't absolve ourselves of the soft skills training. That's more and more embedded inside the curriculum. Even if it's invisible on the surface, you get it when you come in. There's a lot of people who seem to want to come to uni to put some letters on their CV. For me, that's not really what it's about. And it shouldn't even be about what grade you get when you come out, as long as you haven't failed, of course. But it should be much more about how deep did you sink your hook into that water? How hard did you go on a fishing trip here and try and bring out some stuff that you really wanted to get on that mission while you were there? Whether it's a, you know, a one afternoon course that you've paid for, whether it's a 4-day residential, whether it's you know, 1 weekend per month for 4 months. There's all kinds of things you can do. You don't have to go through a university, but if you do find yourself going through a university, undergrad, masters, MRes or PhD, it's what you get out, it's what you look for and what you get out that counts, and be yourself about it.
I think on the topic of being yourself, I think one thing that should kind of resonate with a lot of people, because we're making things sound quite structured as a process, reinvent yourself every 10 years, a year out for this, 6 months. I think it's horses for courses for everyone. I mean, the advice that I'd give to anyone, and actually a question or a statement come in a moment ago, I just noticed from, I think it was Maria saying, can you reinvent yourself within your organization? A short answer is absolutely should, and you can. But one thing that has to be really, really clear, when it's reinventing yourself, I would always say, what's important to you? What do you really like as an individual? Because you could start on a pathway. If I look at myself, I went to Cardiff University to study biochemistry. I then spent in my third year 12 hours a day, 5 days a week growing E. coli, culturing it and monitoring it. And it completely sucked the life out of me from a scientific perspective of wanting to apply that. So I found myself into a different sector, which is recruiting scientists and talking to them about science. So my university experience kind of almost pushed me in a direction that played to my strengths. But what were my strengths? Well, I wasn't that interested in what I was doing scientifically. That was a weakness for me. But I was quite interested in speaking to people. It's what I like to do. So I found a career where I could speak to individuals about their career. I can interview them and I can use my scientific background in a slightly different discipline. So I guess the point I'm trying to make to everyone is, don't worry, reinventing yourself doesn't have to be a huge thing. I mean, there'll be occasions where maybe it's thrust upon you because of redundancies, M&As of organizations, shutdowns, and normally there's some form of outreach which will give the ability to understand new skills, whether it's like an outsourcing service to help you look at CVs. But first thing I would say is when you get out of bed every day, how excited are you about what you do? Because if you're really excited about what you do right now, you might not need to reinvent yourself. You might already be in the right company doing the right thing. You just need more time to have more experiences. If you wake up every day absolutely hating what you do, I'm not trying to encourage you to move businesses in any way as a recruiter. What I'm saying to you is ask yourself the question, what is making you feel not as excited? It might be, on to Maria's question, that you might want to have a conversation with your boss or your leader and say, look, for whatever reason, I'm just not feeling it like I used to. I don't know what that is. Can I have a conversation about the future with you? If you're working for the right company, the company's objective is to keep you in their business as long as they can. When they hire you, so I'll use Charles River as an example. I've supplied to Charles River a number of occasions. Their objective will always be, we're a service provider. We're hiring great people for the future. We're not just hiring you for now, for the next year or two. We're hiring you for the future. And a good business's objective is to keep you on that pathway with them as long as they can and offer you the opportunities. And a good leader in front of you or manager's opportunity is to keep you with them as long as they can, but understand when you're ready for what's next, and you should create that relationship and antagonize that conversation. So what I would say is reinventing only needs to be something when you're not excited anymore, in my opinion, or you're missing something to help you to what's next. I don't think truly, even as scientists or people in STEM, we like to think we have everything figured out. We don't know where we're going to be in 10 years. And that terrible interview question, where are you in 1 year, 3 year, 5 years? Who on earth knows where you are in 5 years? Everyone wants to hear a certain answer, but what's important to you is the point here, is what's important to you. And it's about being excited and speaking to people. So if you're not excited, speak to your manager, give your business the opportunity. If you are excited, explore personal R&D options, but it doesn't need to be linear, i.e. a 1 year MBA, a new university study. I have to leave this job to find it. You've got to do what's right for you and what's interesting to you and speak to people. And I speak to a lot of people these days, particularly earlier careers. And to me, the most important thing is what you're there to achieve, what the purpose is. So when you're going into a role, stop looking at the micro detail like I did, 12 hours growing E. coli, bloody hell, this is boring. I'm not going to do that. Start looking at the bigger picture of what that business is trying to achieve and how you fit within that. And if that excites you, you're going to be there for longer and care about it a lot more. A question I'd like to move on to, if it's okay, because we discussed this prior to us speaking, is we were discussing that academic excellence versus maybe those people skills. And I think the question that we had is, how important is a first-class degree? Because we're trained growing up, get the best possible qualification you can, you'll get a job. That's probably what we hear. How important is first class when you're looking at a CV or when you're giving people advice? Any one of you, please jump in. How important is having to get a first-class classification?
Not very. The honest answer is the only time I really look at qualifications is when we're recruiting people straight out of university. So fresh graduates, fresh PhDs. And that's only because there's not much else to go on, to be honest. As soon as people have got a bit of a track record in industry, I'm far more interested to hear about what they've done in their careers, in their own words. And you find people who are passionate about what they do can tell really compelling stories about what they've done. They can describe projects they've worked on, they can describe challenges that they've overcome. And to me, that's much more meaningful than a result they got in university, which which is still impressive. Let's be honest, it takes a lot of work and knowledge to get a first-class degree. But it's an environment that's very different to what I'm going to be asking people to work in. So for myself, I tend to not look at qualifications. I'm far more interested in what a person is like, how they interact, and what experiences they've had outside of academia.
So for me, these kind of things, they're used by various companies. We all know that, right? There are companies who will look at whether you got a first or whatever. But for me, these things need to be taken along with a person in the interview. So, in a PhD program, these are very competitive. Even if you don't have a first and some of the other candidates do, it doesn't mean you won't get on a prestigious PhD program. If you come across in the interview as somebody who's bust the gut to get loads of diverse research experience, and you got a 2-2 and then had to follow up with a master's to repair your reputation in those kind of very grade terms, you're going to walk through the door, because what we're interested in is, can you do research? Because that's what's going to get your PhD. Of course, a PhD is associated with university study, so the higher your grades, the more confident people tend to be. But in most work, it's the balance between what you seem to be like as a person in the interview and your grade. And it's a really good point you made there. There's not a lot else to go on. Most interviews, actually, that's a hallmark, isn't it? Here's another new person walking through the door. So again, I would say be yourself rather than be a first class. But if you're a first class, why? Why does that make you better than the other person? Is it because you plan better? Is it because you listen better? Is it because you communicate better? Let's hear about it.
Great. So I don't have a first class, I have a 2-1. I don't think that's ever stopped me in achieving whatever I wanted. During my year out doing the MBA, I kind of had to, I think there was a lot of people going for those distinctions, which is equivalent to the first class. And it kind of became apparent to me probably November, December time that if I was going to get distinction, I would have to work 24 hours around the clock to get that. The amount of casework you have to do and kind of group work and all the assignments and stuff, you have to spend a lot of hours to get that distinction. And to me, I made that decision around Christmas time that I thought I'd rather get a job and expand that network than to get the distinction. So I split my time and made sure I kind of had a day out of my week every week that I didn't concentrate on my studies. And I did concentrate on building that network and building my CV up. And so that's what I did. I kind of did 6 months of that and managed to get myself a job a couple of weeks, literally just to PhD, just a couple of weeks after finishing my course, where a lot of my colleagues have kind of gone for the distinction and spending all the hours of the day to read those textbooks that you probably wouldn't pick up in the future. And we're still looking for a job 6 months down the line. So I think it's really important to kind of not spend all that time studying, kind of split your time into both sides.
The question people need to ask themselves of all of that is, what is your USP? What is your unique selling point? Because there are other first class. If you're a first class, what makes you different to them? There are other people with a 2-1, and I'll put my hand up and I'm happy to say I got a 2-2, guys. I got a Desmond 2-2. And ironically, my university were less interested in pursuing my PhD options and stuff as a 2-2 graduate from bio. But ironically, now I'm asked to come back and talk at the university quite often to help people with careers and talk about what I've done in those 15 years, and probably helps having a billionaire business partner in Lord Sugar, right? They're looking for a bit of affiliation for that. But I guess where I'm going there is, whatever you get now doesn't define you. It is those extra USP factors about you that stands out, because that's what people are hiring all day, every day, is you, not your CV, not your qualifications. And I would even say this, that a lot of organizations, when they're hiring, even as a fresh graduate or a fresh PhD, There is sometimes this mantra I had around a lot of my friends. So they're like, they didn't work at university because their parents are really, really keen on them getting the best qualification possible. My family couldn't afford me to go to university, so I had to work at university, and I worked in sales, so I started speaking to people, right? Ironically, those extra factors, when you're hiring a CRO, have you worked in customer service at university? Okay, have you been exposed to a customer? Have you sat at Tesco's and had someone yelling in your face because they're not happy that the product was deficient? There's nothing. I actually think some of the best academic minds in the world work in petrol stations. I don't know if anyone's ever realised that. I certainly has as a recruiter. The amount of people with a PhD work in a petrol station to supplement their income, supplement their earnings while they're studying, to eventually use that as customer service skills. So always think, what are the other skills that, as Nadia says, balance your time between your study and getting your academic excellence, as well as some of those extra bits. And there was a point that's been made into the chat box, which is investing sometimes implies a cost associated. So there's a question I'm coming here to the panel, but using that as an example, there's no cost associated with doing a part-time job. If you have the time and you need the means, you're developing skills that are useful to your employer, that are really valuable. I put my hand up. So I 60% of my workforce have a STEM background. They speak to scientists to help them with their careers. I think it's important, because if you don't care about science, you're not going to be able to help people, is my opinion. I won't hire someone that hasn't had a job. And I don't mean a job after university. I mean, they haven't done a job and they've had somebody else other than their mum or dad tell them what time to get up, what time to have lunch, what time to be home. And that's not being rude, but it's, as an employer, I'm trying to develop additional skills in the person, not life skills. And some of the life skills you can develop in personal R&D as an early career and just having a job are quite valuable. So the question to the panel on the point of investing into personal R&D feels like it could be expensive and has a cost. Do you guys have any examples of resources that people might be able to look at or be familiar with, that free, easy to use, and maybe could be done in your own time?
Yes, there's a lot of stuff available online nowadays, more than probably there was when I was starting out in my career, certainly. So there's loads of, a thing where I come across loads of useful things is LinkedIn. So as well as the sort of official LinkedIn learning, which there's a small cost associated with, but there's also lots of articles you can access for free on there. So just simply connecting with people in the industry that you're either in at the moment or you're wanting to get into, and just reading from their experiences, you can just get loads of insight into industries by following the right people on LinkedIn, and it's very quick and easy, and it costs nothing. And then if you are in a position where you can go into spend a little bit of money on it, that LinkedIn Learning has got tons and tons of valuable soft skills type training on there, and that's a very useful resource as well.
Perfect, thank you, Andy. I thought Rinos had a question. I think had an example there a moment ago.
Yeah, there's a couple of examples that sprang to mind actually. One of them is if I start with the fact I work at Birkbeck, and Birkbeck's an evening university, and the students there typically hold down a day job. Okay, and when students apply to my own course, I tell them, if you can, do the 2-year part-time, and they're like, oh, that's 2 years living costs. And it's like, yeah, but the reason I'm telling you to do it is not so that you can stay in bed all morning while your full-time mates are slogging it. It's so that you can nail down a couple of internships. So by the time you've come out of the course, you've got some other lines on your CV, not just MSc Biobusiness. So that's the one thing. The other thing is more along the lines of what Andy was saying, which is there are loads of free resources out there. Again, as Andy said earlier, what is it you want to do? Do you want to be an entrepreneur? There's loads of free entrepreneur resources. Do you want to be a salesperson? There's loads of free, how to nail sales stuff out there. I mean, I'm sure Ricky's going to hold his head in his hands here with what the free stuff tells you to do. But, day jobs, internships, just stuff where you put yourself out there. So there's all these other lines on your CV, not just, 2018 to 2021 university. What about everything else? Did you join any societies? Did you do any LinkedIn learning courses? Did you, go off and do, there's loads of these graduate things now where if you're in a university, you can join this kind of, I don't know, it's a pool of some sort where you can get grouped together with other students and do consultancy projects under the mentorship of an actual employed consultant. So you kind of divide the workload amongst a lot of bright people. You can put that on your CV. Okay, it's all out there.
One thing that I should probably add is everybody on this panel is here because they've decided to invest into their R&D. Okay, so I think very kindly comment when in a moment ago, One Nucleus, of course, has its educational channels. I'm not paid by One Nucleus, guys. I'm not selling One Nucleus in any way. However, we're all here at the moment, and what we're all here doing is investing into our own personal R&D. Us on the panel, yes, we want to share some input, but we also learn from hearing from each other as well, I think is an important thing. So joining up with networking groups, whether it's kind of your traditional online, your LinkedIn's, LinkedIn Learning and stuff like that, is really valuable. As the world comes together, the offline networking, so coming to conferences and events where you can make it work around your I'm sure your business would be happy for you to go to a networking event in the industry. There's value add, you represent the business, or academically, it's certainly there. And on the topic of, I guess, LinkedIn, and this isn't a sell for me in any way whatsoever, but I put 2 to 3 pieces of content out every single day at the moment for free that I don't charge anyone. And I've got a whole host of videos on how to interview better, how to hire better, how to write CVs. That's not me selling a single piece of product. I have no converted sales funnel to turn you from a follower or a network connection into a paid customer. I'm a B2B business. I'm not a B2C. So I would look for people in your space that have either walked the walk that you're looking to follow or can add value to what you're doing. Follow them, engage with them, learn from them. Doesn't take much time. We all spend a lot of time on other socials, Instagram, Twitter, and bits and pieces. You can use LinkedIn for those type of things. It's not always paid. But when it comes to network, and one thing I'd say is network should always work 2 ways. Not just one way. It's not about what you can get at someone. Hopefully at some point there's a return for you to be able to help them or somebody else. Please remember. And I guess if we could have a chat on networking, Renata, if I come over to you.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in on that very point, actually, because the One Nucleus angle, One Nucleus Bio Wednesdays are a great place if you're a PhD student or a postdoc and you're thinking of making a transition. You know, one of the ways you can invest in your personal R&D is by going to such events and just generally networking, talking to people, finding out what they do. And then you'll find out a lot of what goes into that job. And you'll make very human connections. It won't seem so artificial, like, oh, I'm looking for knowledge. That knowledge will just pour all over you like you're standing under the shower in the morning. I mean, you know, and you'll be surprised to find that a lot of people, because I know it's a stressful time when people are just looking for a job, you'll be surprised to find a lot of people will be interested in you and refer you to people. And as Nadia said earlier, it's that networking part that will probably lead you to your job. Obviously, people like Ricky as well. But yeah, networking, do it.
No, I think it's really important. Just being yourself. Before I joined One Nucleus, I didn't realise, I think as a young scientist, you don't really realise what jobs are out there in the life science sector. And just going to those events can really open up your eyes and show you what else is out there. It's not just about lab work. But there's also lots you can do that aren't courses in networking. So during my PhD, I did lots of science and society work. So I went into schools and talked about science with children. I know my organisation now, they allow you to kind of take time out to do voluntary work and charity work. So companies will support you to do this. So at the moment, there's lots that can be done around the vaccination or the COVID, helping your neighbours, helping old people locally. It's all that kind of thing that can, it's voluntary charity, it's free, you can do it between your work, and it makes a difference, and yeah, really can add to your CV.
These are things you should certainly be asking employers of the future, not just have an interview. Have you got any questions? No, you've covered everything. It's the worst thing you can ever do in an interview is not ask a question, but all of these things to understand the business's culture, what do you do about supporting charities? What opportunities are there for people to invest into personal development? What are your internal, external training? What are your networking policies? These things are really, really quite valuable.
Oh, hello. Could I speak with somebody, please, in your family law or wills and probate team, please?
Okay, I think there's someone on the line that's not part of this line.
The Wills and
So someone's facilitating, want to mute who that might be. There's a really good question, guys. I don't think that was for us, that one anyway. Unless there's anyone in the panel has
wills and probate.
Andy, I thought that was your part-time hobby. There's a good question from, I think it's Isla in the chat, a university careers advisor. Mentions in the chat that a lot of support is given to look at LinkedIn networking, but how many people are really open to giving either shadowing or work advice or experience to people not at their company? What's the honest opinion from the panel on people willing to provide that help to others without a personal interest of the business, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we tend to do sort of things like that in structured ways. So we have relationships with universities where we host people on industrial placements, for example, and increasingly PhD placements, and then also local schools where we arrange, 1 week, 2 week work experience placements. Speaking for myself, it's quite difficult to arrange job shadowing because we have kind of confidentiality issues and things like that. So I'd imagine in terms of informal conversations, a lot of people would be amenable to just having a quick chat. I think in terms of bringing people in on site to shadow what we're doing, certainly from my experience in the industry, that can be a bit more challenging if it's outside a structured program.
I think it's more likely that you will, where I work, for example, right, that you will be able to come along to group events, okay, where you'll find stuff out. I host people in my lab because I run a research group as well. Host people in my lab the whole time from all over the country, and even from North America. I have Canadians and people from the United States every year in my lab as well. But again, those are structured programs, and I'm a preferred partner and so on, and so that's how that happens. Otherwise, I would say, go along, if you're at university, go along to events that are put on. By all means, reach out on LinkedIn. You sometimes will get accepted, sometimes not. I tend to not accept LinkedIns from people that either A, I don't know, or B, haven't been at an event where I've been and said I want to follow up by connecting with you. And then once you've connected with someone, as others have said, you can see which groups are they linked with. Groups, who are they following, that kind of stuff. It's been said before, so I think it's all good advice.
Probably one tip on if it's online networking, particularly LinkedIn, guys, is if you connect with someone, you can put a bespoke message, a short one or not, put a message to let them, so they don't think it's a robot. That will get the attention of the person, and don't let the first message you send them be the one where you want something. So I get this a lot. People sell to me all day, every day. They sell service into my company. If the first message is a sales message, I'm either going to unconnect or I'm going to delete it or I'm going to move on. I'm not going to read it. It's about networking. It's not just what's in it for you. So my advice is if there's somebody you want to get advice from, and I think listening to the panel, you're more likely to get advice than you are practical work-based experience, unless it's a structured, is network with the people by connecting in a bespoke way, engage with their content, like what they're sharing, comment on what they're sharing, put your name on their radar so they realize who you are. And then when you eventually do ask, look, I'm really interested in this field of science, I'd love to find out a little bit more about this. And this is at all levels of career, by the way. This isn't early careers, this is all levels and all seniorities. Ask them if there's anything you can find out more once you've developed a relationship. I always look at anything in the job industry, and please excuse me, is a little bit like dating, right? When you meet people, the date and the interview are similar. Like one, it's the same with this. So somebody just sends you a message to a social media saying, can I have a drink? You're unlikely to want to go for a drink with that person straight away. If they're engaging with content, you understand a bit more who they are. I might start following to find out more about them. You're going to build an emotional relationship, which means you're more likely to have a future relationship. Networks are about long-term, not short-term. And you've got to invest into them as much as they invest into you.
Completely agree. What I did when I was looking for my next role was basically contact people on LinkedIn and say, can we have a chat about what you do, what your industry is about, what your job does? And people are really happy to talk about themselves. So start kind of build that rapport, and then yeah, I've never had anyone to come back and say, sorry, I haven't got time to speak to you. Whenever I've made a decision, I've always reached out to the network I have, and people are just happy to have a chat and let you know what their experiences are. So don't be afraid to do that, but don't reach out just asking for a LinkedIn friend request, and don't expect people to come back in that way.
We don't get married after one day. Well, a lot of people don't anyway, unless you watch Married at First Sight. Now that's a slightly different TV program, right? And which I know nothing about, of course. Only my wife enjoys watching that program. But you always got to think about the long term in every type of relationship that we're doing. Nadia, something I just wanted to ask to you, a very kind comment Ray's put in there is congratulations on your MBA, by the way. What did you get out most from the program?
There was the more commercial skills, so lots about finance, which I'd never done before, economics, that kind of stuff. So that really was an eye-opener. With the personal side, it's actually being in a classroom with people not from the life science sector. I think we don't realize what a bubble we are, and we're all very nice people and kind of very open, but there's other sectors and industries out there that aren't the same. It's quite a ruthless world out there, and I think we forget that. So just really interacting with people outside the life science industry. I was the only life scientist in the classroom, so having that kind of experience from others and in their industries was a real eye-opener, and I learned lots from that side, I'd say.
I think that's really important. I think you are right. It's sometimes hard to see what other industries and other people are like outside a sector. And I do think it's a really, really nice sector. I think the two things that I would like to share from I guess a talent perspective is please, where you can, promote the sciences outside of the sector. I'm not saying that's to make everyone a scientist, but I think scientists or the industry is very good at talking to each other about what's going on. And the more and more there's more open collaboration and stuff to get product to market, I mean, you look at the vaccine world, it's all about different organizations trying to help in different ways right now to help to support the world. That's what this sector does. Other sectors don't. So where we can, let's say the great things to people outside a sector to champion the sciences, because I do think we can't all work for Facebook. We can't all work for Apple, which seems to be the type of companies a lot of people in the world want to work for these days. Let's champion the sciences. And Nadia, you mentioned a moment ago in terms of people have reached out. Obviously, you're happy to give some input, and a lot of people are. I think one thing that's definitely a soft skill to learn is the art of rejection. And I use that as a nice word, everyone. We can't all apply to one job with one CV, get an interview and get the job. It's just not possible. Likewise, send one message to someone on LinkedIn and expect a result. It's a numbers game on some occasions. And I say that not in a dirty way or a bad way, but please get used to rejection in life. Sometimes you might not hear what you want to hear or get what you want straight away. A lot of times it might redirect you to something even better or build up a level of resilience. So what about rejection as a soft skill, if I can ask the panel? How important is rejection, or are there examples where you've been rejected and it's helped you to do better things? If you wanted to share, of course.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the resilience is right up there, I think. So things will go wrong in your career, and it might be whilst you're looking for a job, it might be whilst you're in a job. You know, things go wrong. If you're taking on new challenges, things should go wrong occasionally, because if things go perfectly, you're probably not taking enough risk and probably not pushing yourself enough. Well, I'd also say from an interview point of view, we've interviewed people who are, I'm pretty sure, really, really good scientists and really good at their job, and we've turned them down because they just weren't quite right for this role. I'm pretty sure that I'll go on to be really successful somewhere else. So in terms of job hunting, it's important to not take a knockback personally, because it might be that you're fantastic at what you do. You're just not right for that company, for the culture or the particular role.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think it's important to realize as well that organizations, companies have personalities. And when we're interviewing, you've got to look like you're going to get on with the company, the organizational personality. You know, it comes down to the group that's hiring, the division, the company that's hiring. You know, they have a personality. So as Ricky said, you know, it's a bit like dating. You're not going to go on a date and then get married. Even if you have 20 dates, you might not get married, right? the whole point is that there is this process of does the jigsaw fit here? Is we're trying to drive a square peg into a round hole? And you've got to remember, you might be one person versus one company for that job you're going for, but that company is looking at 8 people that day, and they might be very well looking at 8 people the next day too. And out of those 16 people, they've got to get one person into that role. Please don't be disappointed. Do ask for feedback. I know it's very naughty of companies. Feedback is one of these things that we seem to tacitly promise but very rarely give back. You know, don't be dogged to the point where they block you as an email person, but do ask for feedback at timely intervals till you get what you're looking for.
Perfect, thank you. I think we're about to be told we're coming to conclusion.
I've re-emerged, yes. Honestly, it has been such a thoroughly enjoyable conversation. I've made so many notes just to help provide a brief recap, but honestly, everything has been so valuable. I think for me, it really is your own personal experiences and expertise, which has really helped to guide and shape the conversation. So I've got investing in R&D is really about a focus on soft skills. It's about being yourself. It's also about understanding people are kind and that we want to help each other, and it doesn't necessarily need to have that monetary element to it. It's about looking at your USP, organic relationship building, taking time. So again, from a BD perspective, understanding that things do take time and relationships need to be nurtured. So all very, very thoroughly enjoyable. So with that, I do have to close the session, I'm afraid. And just to thank all our panelists and our chair, Ricky, for your time and sharing your expertise. And to remind all the attendees that we are going to come back at 12:15 with our next session, the Taste of Success, so our lunchtime session, and that this session will be available as part of the on-demand content as well. So with that, I'd just like to wish everyone a very good rest of the day and hope to see you soon, and also utilise the conference app in between the discussions to make those valuable connections. So thanks very much, everyone, and take care.
Thank you, everyone.